When I was 9 years old, I remember reading about American slavery. And I couldn't believe that people openly owned other people. And I remember telling my teacher, if I lived back then, I would never have slaves. And my teacher smiled, and she said, "That's really sweet, Scott. But if you were there, you probably would have had slaves." Because everyone did. People smarter than you did. It's just the way that it was. And that made me mad. Because I realized she was probably right. And then I started to think about all the other horrible things that I might have done if I had grown up in a different time or place or in a different family. Well, it was a long time ago anyway, and now, of course, I'm a nice, responsible grown-up. I recycle. I work with nonprofits, I sign petitions, I share stories on social media, and when I read about something bad in the news, I try and donate $20 to whatever charity might be cleaning that up. So I feel pretty good. Until a few years ago, and then I read this report by the Human Rights Department at Harvard. They documented over 3,000 cases of human trafficking and forced child labor at carpet factories in India. And I looked down at my feet, and I was standing on a handmade Indian rug. And it hit me. And it hit me hard. I am the cause of these issues. I funded that factory. Those children were working for me. I am a slave owner. And it gets worse. I torture animals. I clear-cut rainforests. I am racist. I am sexist. I am homophobic. I support dictators. I jail innocent people, and it makes me sick. This is not who I wanted to be when I grew up. The things that we buy and the trillions of dollars we spend each year have the biggest and most direct impact on the kind of world we live in, and yet we know almost nothing about them. When I walk into a store or I shop online, I have no idea where this stuff is from, who made it, any of the environmental or social impacts, health and safety issues, worker conditions, political donations. All I know is what the brand decides to put on the box. Why is this a big deal? Because this is a root problem. Let's take the case of the Indian rug. An activist named Kailash Satyarthi ended up rescuing thousands of these Indian children and returning them to their families. And he created a rug certification program, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014. But it is still fixing the problem after the fact. The root problem keeps happening. And I can send $20 to a charity to clean something up after the fact, but my $20 cannot compete with the $20,000 I spend every year buying products, funding companies that could be creating these problems in the first place. So how do we fix it? Well, at the company level, all goods go through this huge networks. There's producers, distributors, warehouses, all the way to the consumer. And this is the supply chain, right? Now, back in the caveman days, we made our own products, so the supply chain was one link. We knew the consequences, but now the chain is insane. Last year, we moved $19 trillion worth of goods around the world. Supply chain science is more complex than rocket science. But we're getting software and hardware to finally catch up, and I'm working with startups like EcoChain to help companies become more sustainable and more efficient. Companies are also expanding corporate social responsibility departments, which is great, and there are more companies that are putting social good at the core of their mission. So companies are a part of the solution, but they still exist to sell stuff. So what about the retailers? Well, retailers are helping too. Some of them promise to only carry ethically sourced products like Whole Foods or Honest Company, so we don't have to trust the manufacturer because the store is doing the curation. But these stores also have a very strong profit motive, and we don't know if their criteria matches our values. And And who's checking these companies and retailers to make sure they're doing what they're saying? So let's look over at certification and nonprofits, like fair trade. They make sure that a worker was paid a fair wage. And B Corporation is like a certification, but for companies. So companies have to earn this mark. But we don't know a whole lot of certifications because they're very hard and expensive. They require ongoing partnerships with companies. And so we look to nonprofits to police all of this. And nonprofits collect data, and they publish this data, but they're very fractured. They covered thousands of independent issues, and their information is really not very accessible, is it? So then we look at government legislation, which is also important and getting better. But regulations are ultimately a will of the people, right? Who elect their government. So ultimately, it all comes back to us, doesn't it? We are the ones that are causing these issues. So I think we are the ones who are going to fix them. And we are getting more aware of the consequences of our actions. There are 3.8 million LinkedIn members last year that said that they wanted to serve on nonprofit boards or they wanted to use their skills to volunteer. So that will is appearing in the public consciousness. And so what I'm suggesting is that the final piece of the puzzle is the technology. For the first time, we can connect all of these players. The internet is jumping out of the computer, it's jumping onto physical things, and by 2018, 20 billion devices are going to be able to communicate and share data with each other and with us. So we've got RFID tags that allow data from an object to be transmitted and stored. Companies can check to see all the live locations of the parts involved in their products. Certification companies are using molecular scanners to determine the chemical makeup of objects. And independent companies like Labdoor are testing off-the-shelf products and publishing the information they get for free. So there's a lot of pressure from retailers, governments, market pressures from consumers, and all of this data is getting opened up to the public. I'm working with a company called Provenance, which uses incredible peer-to-peer technology called the blockchain to track and to share all of this data in real time. And let's not forget apps, right? Our favorite tech. There's an app called Humane Eating that lets you find more humane businesses. Think Dirty looks for toxic ingredients in your cosmetics. Bipartisan tells you about a company's political donations. Good Guide rates products based on environmental or social factors. Food UK gives a lot of details about food ingredients far better than a label ever could. Boycott lets you create and follow campaigns that support or boycott certain companies. And then, of course, OpenLabel, my own little pet project, which I'm building to act as a sort of central place for all of this data, like a Google or a Wikipedia for product information. So I invite the apps, nonprofits, the brands, the public to all scan barcodes of any product in the world and then attach their knowledge and share it directly with the consumers. So far, we've indexed about 30 million products and have a few 100,000 pieces of information. But there is a lot more work to do. Eventually, this will get better about learning your particular preferences. And ultimately, I visualize this digital label floating next to every product in the world that just makes all the information more transparent so that we know the consequences of what we're doing. It's not floating yet, but we are starting to empower consumers to shop smarter because I'm finally ready to stop being part of the problem. These technologies can combine and align the objectives of all of these different stakeholders, and they can solve major social and environmental problems at the root and at scale. So let's let go of the 9-year-old Scott, and let's look at future Scott, the Scott who knows what he's buying, knows what he's funding, and that Scott is going to look at me today on the stage and wonder, how did we ever shop so blindly and in the dark with disregard to consequences? The label is dead. Let's all start shopping a little smarter for a healthier family, a healthier society, and a healthier planet. Thank you.